On this episode of On the Mic with Mike and Moose.
The worldly view is that when somebody does something that is horrible to the eyes of the public, they're automatically just like almost outcast for the rest of their life. And I personally don't agree with that. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I think that there's a way for people to redeem themselves and get a second chance. Hey everybody, this is your boy Moose coming to you live from just outside of Birmingham, Alabama.
And this is Mike Pickett coming to you live from Moore, Oklahoma, the tornado capital of the world.
And welcome to the On the Mic with Mike and Moose. Mike, we've had a couple episodes back to back that were fun ones,
Oh,
and
yeah. Had a
you and I
blast.
were talking off air. We're talking about how it might be time for us to come back and reel it back in to have a little more serious conversation.
Yep.
And one of the conversations that you and I had discussed was talking about people who get second chances.
Yeah.
And um, I you see this all the time, and I think the worldly view is that when somebody does something that is horrible to the eyes of the public, they're automatically just like almost outcast for the rest of their life. And I personally don't agree with that. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I think that there's a way for people to redeem themselves and get a second chance.
And I agree with that completely. This is how I differentiate but with that. There are some grotesque things that humans can do because we're human. Uh, even the best of us are have a little bit of evil in us because we still have this flesh on us, right? Let me rephrase that: not evil in us, we're not possessed, but we have uh, situations that we act evil in, and because we lean more to the flesh than the spirit. But with that being said, I believe that restoration can happen for anyone, right? Spiritually, and God can do great things. But that does not mean that everyone gets to go back to where they were, like leadership wise or and those type of things. Now, spiritually, they're going to go to the same heaven if they have went through the redemption and the restoration of it, because God does that. As humans, that there has to be a process, but it needs to be a biblical process on how we do it,
Mhm.
because I feel like we throw the baby out with the bathwater, and we look at through one lens and say, well, this person is going to be this, and that's who they're going to be for the rest of their life. But I do believe there's redemption, but I also believe that there are clear markers that we have to set in place for that. Now, I'm not talking about their redemption because we don't know their walk with Christ, right? I'm
Mhm.
talking back into doing things within a church, a company, whatever you want to. You've got to have clear markers that they completed this, this, and this, and you got to make sure because the public saw what happened. So there needs, if there is going to be a private or public sin, there needs to be a public restoration
Right.
that people see. So that cannot be private. And I have fought with people about that before. They were like, well, I'm going to do it off the grid. And no, no. If people know about it, if it's gotten out, if what
Mhm.
you have, if you've went to jail or prison or any of those things, or if you're on the list for a certain act, you need to have a public restoration. You need to have that to where people will see it, because people are not going to believe you saying, well, I'll work on it myself. They need to know that you're meeting with your pastor. They need to know that you're going through these processes. You
Mhm.
might say, well, it's none of their business. In a way, it is when it became public. But once again, that's not your walk with Christ. Your walk with Christ is between you and him, and your redemption, that's the main thing. But getting back into public duty or doing any of those things, there's got to be clear markers, just in my opinion, because I've seen where people have brushed, for instance, pastors who have cheated on their wives, right? That it was brushed underneath the rug and never dealt with. And it was public. And they just kept on doing what they were doing. What that did is for another person that's really trying to get restored, people don't believe them. And so
Mhm.
I feel like when we don't deal with sin, when we don't talk about how bad it was, and we don't say, hey, this is the roadmap. Because if I ever did something, I've already talked to my leadership, I've already talked to my wife. If I have a moral failure, I want it to be public. I don't want it to be private. Because, and you might say, well, I'm not that way. Guys, please listen to me. Listen to me. If you keep it all in, if you keep it private, then you will continue to suffer in private. But your story might set somebody free, and
Mhm.
no matter what it is. So that's just my viewpoints on it, Moose. You know, I don't, and we might not share the same viewpoint with that. But as a pastor who has had to restore people, who has had to go through that process, that's what we do. We do clear indicators of you're going to do. Can I give a for instance? Do we have time to do that? It'll take
Mhm.
1 minute.
That's fine.
We had someone in our church that was accused of stolen valor. Do you know what that is?
No.
Stolen valor is someone who says that they served in the military
Ah,
and did
gotcha.
not. Well, we had brought these people on as leaders at our church. They were our youth pastors. Well, he was telling stories around the congregation about his different war stories, and we found out that there was no way this man could be in the military. Well, there's a form the military gives when you're discharged, and it's DD something. I forget the letters
Mhm.
after it. And I said, I need that letter. I need your discharge letter. Why would you need that? Because people are thinking you have never served before. And him and his wife were there, and we had some leaders there, and he broke down crying. He says, I never served. I went to boot camp and left the second weekend.
Wow.
And he had told all these stories. He'd gotten recognitions for things. He had gotten financial blessings for it. And his wife didn't even know. She found out right then too.
Oh, wow.
So what did I do? I had to, because he was a minister within our denomination
Mhm.
and a leader at our church. I had to do what was called, I said, do you still want to do ministry? Because you've been called. You've been called, and said, yes, I do. I said, for 1 whole year, you cannot have a microphone. You cannot lead, and you're going to have to sit on the pew, the chair, and you're going to have to grow. And I'm going to have to meet with you twice a month, and you're going to have to get a counselor, a true counselor that's going to help you. And
Mhm.
after that year's time, if we see that you're repentive of what you've done, if you've grown and you're ready to do this again, we're going to put you right back in there and we're going to celebrate. But it's going to take a year. He lasted 2 weeks.
Wow.
And now he's went to go plant a church himself independently and is telling the story again. That's why it's so important. I made the announcement in front of our church. My council said, are you going to make that announcement in front of everyone? I said, I have to, because there's been a lot of public accusations that he was lying.
Mhm.
And so we had to make that announcement public.
Yeah.
But if he would have followed through with that, he'd already been restored by now. We would have worked with him, but he chose not to. And there are some people that are watching this that have chosen not to repent and chosen not to be
Mhm.
restored or go through restoration. And you can't blame the pastors, you can't blame the family, you can't blame anybody, you can't even blame God. You have to say,
One
God,
person to blame, right?
yeah, you have to say, God, I want to be restored. And
Mhm.
you have to be willing. If you did it, you got to be man or woman enough to say, I did it. And that's when we run in as leaders with grace. We restore unto grace because grace was lavished upon us. So that's my 2 cents.
I hear you. No, so one of the reasons that I brought this up is because I have a family member who is my uncle, I was living in West Virginia in 2009, and I got a call from my mom. And my mom said that somebody in our family was in trouble, and I was like, "Well, yeah, I knew. I thought it was my brother, my stepbrother, he was talking about, who was in prison out in Arizona." And she said, "No, it's not him." And apparently, the FBI raided my grandmother's house because my uncle was arrested for um, possession of obscene material.
Yeah.
Someone under the age of 18 or 19 or whatever it is, and then he had so much on it that he had um, it's kind of like with drugs. If you have so much on it, you can get that other charge with intent to distribute.
Yeah.
So all of his stuff was white collar, but it doesn't make it any better.
No.
And honestly, and I don't know if I've ever actually told him this, but my grandmother ended up foregoing cancer treatment while she was trying to fight his case. Like her money that she was going to been using for her treatment went
Yeah.
towards his defense.
Wow.
And so she passed away while he was locked up. He was in federal prison
Yeah.
for almost 12 years. Um, they let him out around COVID. He got out 6 months early when he was supposed to because of overcrowding, and then also the COVID pandemic had just started. Um, and let me tell you something, Mike. I found out he was getting out. He let me know. I went over and saw him. He's only 10 years older than I am. And the difference in him now versus where he was about 20 years ago, I mean, it's like a complete 180.
Oh yeah.
Like he would make all these comments, all these, kind of lewd comments about my sister's friends and, things like that. Like his first marriage, I think he was like 20 or 21 and she was like 15. So,
Oh wow.
all this came about, wasn't surprised, but part of me or sympathizes, not empathize, sympathizes with him, my uncle, because he was sexually abused as a child.
Oh man.
And so it was just a never ending cycle. It was part of that cycle. And he's been out since 2021. And he started coming to my discipleship group. We discipled him for a while. He couldn't get a job because, of course, he was a convicted
Oh,
felon. Finally, he got on with a group that specializes in getting convicted felons work. Um, he registers every year, but he has a job at a warehouse called I think it's Metacraft. They make um, Tupperware type
gotcha.
bottles. That's what he does, and he works at one of those swing shifts where he works like he's one week he works 4 days and he's off 3 days, and the next week he's works 3 days and is off 4 days. Kind of like the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday type,
Oh yeah.
off and on. Um, he is in a church that is about probably 20-25 minute drive from where I live called Restoration Church. And
Good names.
it specializes in people who have been on hard times. They have a lot of drug addicts that go there. They do like a celebrate recovery there.
Oh yeah.
He's there. He's a registered sex offender. Um, like I said, he never did anything physically. That doesn't make it any worse. But he goes to a church, but he knows that he'll never be able to probably be in any sort of leadership capacity.
Yeah. Yeah.
He can be restored spiritually for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other story that I wanted to talk about, and by the way, I just want to say that I'm proud of him for
Amen.
for doing what. It's not that I'm just like so upset with him. I mean, he didn't meet my daughter for a long time because I didn't want to have to deal with that with my ex-wife.
Oh yeah, because she knew about it. Yeah.
Yeah, me and my ex-wife were married when it happened.
Oh
So,
wow.
so, but anyway, got another friend, a guy named Danny. Danny's from Birmingham. Danny's my father's age. He was my father's age. He was born in the late 50s. And Danny was a practicing homosexual. Uh, he went to the big Catholic high school here in Birmingham. And as soon as he graduated, he moved to San Francisco. And Danny became essentially what you would call a houseboy
Gotcha. I know what you
for
mean.
an affluent couple in San Francisco. And he was essentially a sex slave for them.
Oh wow.
Pretty much anything they said he had to do.
Wow.
And he came back to Alabama at some point. And this was in the 70s. He came back to Alabama at some point in the 80s. And in 1989, he was diagnosed with HIV. Um, and he still wasn't right, doing right. And then I guess about 20 years ago, he felt that something was missing out of his life, but he never thought he'd go back to a church. But he still tried. Uh, 4 churches later, after he'd been kicked out of the other churches, he'd been asked not to come back because of his previous lifestyle, not because of what he was doing at the time, but just because they found out of his previous lifestyle and he was HIV positive. He landed at North Park Baptist Church in Trussville, Alabama, which is where I happen to go. And not only that, he befriended our pastor.
Wow.
And so Danny and I had many conversations. Danny was like, I have these urges and I have to have accountability because I don't want to act on them because I know it's not right. And I'll probably get a lot of hate for this, but I don't care. But he was told that, just to pray about it and just to do what was right. Um, and so he and we had multiple conversations. He got in a discipleship group as well. And he was discipled for many years by our pastor. Danny ended up having like diabetes. He was on dialysis. He was missing both of his legs. He had both his legs amputated from the knee down.
Oh wow.
He was missing half his fingers. And he, at the time of his death, was the longest surviving HIV positive person in the state of Alabama. It had been
Wow.
32 years.
Yeah, that didn't happen. Yeah.
And COVID what got him. He called me the other day he got COVID and he was crying. He's like, Justin, I'm so scared. But to kind of talk about Danny's arc, Danny wanted to be a part of leadership at church, and it was never a good time. And of course, as big as a church as I go to, there's always going to be people that are going to talk.
Yep.
They're just people that didn't want him there. And I know
Yep.
some of the people, and I have issues with some of the people that were doing that. But Danny was a nurse, so he was able to serve on our medical team that was on call, standby if something happened during a church service.
Yep.
Um, he was a discipleship group leader. He led other people that were in the same circumstances as he was come to Christ. He had a friend of his that was living with somebody, and they ended up like separating, and they were still cordial with each other, but they were no longer living their lifestyle. Um, we did 1 year, I think it was 2020, we or not 2019. We sponsored a family of 4 kids who had a single dad for Christmas. And Danny was so excited when he got to meet one of the little girls that was there because she was such an avid reader that he went out and bought her like the Chronicles of Narnia
Oh
so
yeah.
he could have it to read. Like, Danny was just he was one of those guys that if you could get past the fact that his past life was sinful,
Oh yeah.
that you would see how on fire he was for God. And to me, whether we're talking about my Uncle Kurt, or we're talking about Danny Mosley, or we're talking about the pastor or the youth pastor at your church,
Yep.
it doesn't matter what the sin is. people deserve second chances.
They do.
Now, if they're like my brother that I briefly mentioned, my stepbrother who's in prison out in Arizona, the man don't deserve a second chance because he's not penitent at all.
Yeah.
Like he killed somebody. Now he was held up, but it was for him it turned into a racial thing,
Yeah.
and he like I talked to my stepsister about it. And he still says if he had every chance to do it again, he'd do it again.
Yeah. So no repentance. Yeah.
Right. So for me, this is hard for people, especially in the church. But I mean, I think this is hard for society in general and I think it's hard for people in the church because of the way society, kind of talks about it.
Oh,
If
yeah.
if you're on that registered sex offender list, I mean, you're branded. That's the
Yeah.
scarlet letter. That's the number of the bit. Whatever you want to say, you're branded for the rest of your life. And if if the world wants to sit there and condemn you for the rest of your life, it's a lot easier for people in the church to do it as well.
Yeah.
But like with my Uncle Kurt or the way Danny was, like I said, if you just got to know them and especially if you knew both of them prior to whatever life circumstance hit them and you saw how they were at post that big event happening to them,
Yes.
that you would just be like, wow, you know?
No.
So,
No. And with that, I've learned this too. So speaking of people, gotcha. Speaking of people that are of that lifestyle, I always give this disclaimer. Same-sex attraction is not the sin. It's same-sex action. Attraction is not, action is. So there are people that are through that, and you might be watching today and you feel like you could never, God could take the lifestyle of anybody and change around. So I just want people to know that too, so, but no, I agree completely, and God can restore. So amen. Amen.
well, look, so we appreciate you listening. This is a very heavy subject. It's one that's not easy to talk about. But whether you're watching this on YouTube or you're listening on Podbean or Apple Podcasts, we say we appreciate you doing this. You can like and subscribe. We're also here on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We have a TikTok now for on the Mike and Moose. It's not very
Woo-hoo.
active, but it's there, and I try to get on it some and post some more videos. And then Mike and I both have personal TikToks in which we share the word. Mike's on live every evening around 9 o'clock, bringing people to God. I'm in there modding, being the mean person to
Yes,
mute the people who are not
I
doing
love it.
right. Um, but notice I said mute because I'm giving people second chances to come back in and make it right. Not that a lot of them don't take that opportunity, but it happens. So we appreciate you. Uh, and all of you who are taking your time to listen to this. And Mike, I know that you always have some good parting words for everybody.
Yes. So, y'all, I want you to hear me. No matter what you've done, no matter where you've been or who you've become, this goes with the message today. You have not gone too far. God can meet you in the sin right there where you are. That doesn't mean you'll stay in the sin. He'll pull you out of it. Trust Him to do that. And we would love for you to connect with us.
Just want to let everybody know I'm praying for you. God bless.